Well, hey there, oldies. Welcome to That Old Soul Show, or as I like to call it, TOSS for short. I'm your host, Sarah McVicker, here to take you on a nostalgic joyride where timeless tunes meet visionary views. Each week, we're diving deep into the sounds that move us, the videos that lit up our screens, and the artful films that made us feel something. This is the show for the old souls with fresh takes, celebrating everything from timeless classics to groundbreaking visuals and cinematic masterpieces that push boundaries. So, grab your headphones, turn up the volume, and let's vibe through the rhythms, reels, and stories that make life unforgettable. Welcome to That Old Soul Show. Well, hey there, oldies. Thank y'all for coming back. I'm so excited. Today, we are talking about surrealism, which is one of my favorite art movements, and some pretty interesting films came out of that period and some pretty cool figures. So we're going to just dive right in because I'm so excited. I'm ready to get in. All right. So surrealism. When did it start? Who were some of the figures? And why surrealism in the first place? So before surrealism came Dadaism, which it was about 8 years earlier. And the thing is, they're similar, but also different. And of course, in my opinion, surrealism takes the cake. But I'll prove to you why. So Dadaism pretty much believed that life had no purpose or no meaning. And what really sets them apart from surrealism is that they focus more on photo montage and collages to create this massive image. But later on, some of the Dada people were like, I want to hop on the bandwagon to surrealism. So some of those people we're going to talk about a little bit is Man Ray. Man Ray was a photographer. And Max Ernst, he's got some really cool stuff too. So these people and surrealism in general, they wanted to base things more on reality beyond the material world. Now, that sounds a little interesting because they're weird, right? Well, that's because they used paintings and writings and even film, of course, to create this surrealist movement. And in my opinion, surrealism was a bit more emotional and imaginary. This is because they're a little more avant-garde, a little more dreamlike. And I'll tell you why. So they started in the early 20th century after World War I. And some will even say that it officially started with a French author and poet named André Breton, and he published the Surrealist Manifesto in 1924. I have a copy of this, and I've been reading it, and so can't report too much on my findings at the moment, but he's definitely into the Freudian theory and psychoanalysis, and of course, paying particular attention to the unconscious mind and dreams and repressed desires and things that I'm just too ashamed, I can't tell anybody, that kind of stuff. Surrealism, and why it's a little bit different than Dadaism, is that it rejected rationalism and the upper crust bougie conventions and embrace this illogical, dreamlike, and bizarre fantasy. It essentially wanted to be free. It wanted freedom to be free, if I can say it like that, and be avant-garde enough to break away from the cookie cutter norm. And of course, to make a statement, whatever that statement was that they wanted it to be. It's also very poetic in that respect. So some of the prominent figures, my absolute favorite, and I think he's top tier, when you think of surrealism, and that is Salvador Dali. He was a painter, and he did like The Persistence of Memory in 1931. That is the painting with all those like melting clocks. Another person, of course, who I mentioned earlier, Man Ray, photographer and filmmaker. He's known for Glass Tears, 1932. And now cinema. Cinema is where it really clicked for me that you could put these illogical, bizarre, out of this world imagery in film. And so surrealists really liked to experiment with the film because it was a bit easier to manipulate time and space and reality, and also just have a more visual language for their dreams. Some of these early surrealist films, Luis Buñuel and Salvador Dali. Now, I'm about to probably butcher this pronunciation, so I apologize. Bear with me. I believe it is Un Chien Andalou. That was in 1929. You might recognize the infamous scene of an eyeball being sliced with a razor. Bizarre, but it like turns into another shot and it's even more bizarre. But if you haven't seen that, I would definitely look it up on YouTube. Go check it out. So with this film, it really abandoned the traditional narrative logic and instead presented a sequence of disjointed and dreamlike vignettes. Now moving further into the timeline, we have our beloved Alfred Hitchcock. Now, we all know him from the Psycho, but he did some other great films. And he used surrealism in his film Spellbound that came out in 1945. And he even had his friend Salvador Dali help him with this eerie, massive dream sequence. And I can't even describe. It's just, it does something. And of course, we know Hitchcock was really good and the master of suspense, and that definitely played a role. Another one of my favorite films that involves some surrealism is 8½, directed by Federico Fellini, 1963. And it manipulates the perception of space really, really well. I'm talking really, really well. Things appear bigger and smaller and just out of this world, over the top. And I think that's another reason why I really like surrealism. It's a bit over the top. Now, a more modern film that plays on surrealism is Birdman, which came out in 2014. This is another one of my favorites and another one of my favorite directors, Alejandro González Iñárritu. He's a Mexican filmmaker, and I really like him because he focuses on the mind and the human condition. And Birdman certainly excels in that regard. So when we're thinking about surrealism, what are some of these experimental techniques that they use to capture the irrational, dreamlike quality of the unconscious mind? So some things you're going to see a lot today is, or when you watch surrealist films or music videos, discontinuous editing. Very, just, you could say choppy. You know, it's distorting the flow. It's distorting the time and space. There's maybe jump cuts and just really jarring cuts. Even like juxtaposition to distort the space and size. Another one is superimposition and double exposure to create this like ghostly effect, this layered image, you know, more than meets the eye, can't believe everything you see kind of thing. Another one that also manipulates time is slow motion and time lapse. Now, the other thing they do, that really sells surrealism, in my opinion, is their non-linear narratives. Now, this is used to break away from conventional storytelling. So you might have, like, think of the movie Memento, where it's jumping all over the place. And you're like, where are we now? And when did he do that? That kind of thing. So these methods really allowed filmmakers to visualize the absurdity and unpredictability of dreams and the subconscious mind. Lastly, they'll use isolation, which kind of works in a way to place the subject in being alone and ruminating with their own thoughts and being stuck in their mind and almost disconnected from the outside world. So the question I have for you today is, can modern experimental films still be considered part of the surrealist tradition? Let's find out in today's music video selections. So the first music video I have for you today is Tailor Swif by A$AP Rocky. This came out in 2024 and was directed by Vania Heyman and Gal Mukia. Right off the bat, we are starting off with absurdity. We've got a dog driving a car. There's a naked man on the hood smoking, and it's just all of this is happening while the car is in motion. But honestly, there's absurdity and unpredictability in pretty much every single shot of this visual. So we won't cover every single thing, but I'll just get into the nitty gritty of why I believe this music video meets surrealist standards. In this video, there is certainly crazy editing and the non-linear narrative. And of course, understanding the lyrics definitely helps this visual make even more sense. It's just because it's so bizarre, you're like watching and you're trying to figure out how this connected. How does this make sense? Well, I know from the lyrics that he's really good at showing off his confidence, just in general, as A$AP Rocky himself humbly does. He always does this through his wordplay, his cadence. However, it's enticing, right? But what got me was the story he started telling of his upbringing and this like rags to riches story. Although at one point in the song, I felt like maybe he never had rags, but that's not true. And I know that. And so when you look at the avant-garde elements in the visual, and it's bougie-ish, but also raunchy bougie, if I can say so, it really fits the characteristics of surrealism. So definitely check it out. And by the way, all of the music videos that I'm going to talk about today you'll be able to see them. I have a music video playlist on my YouTube, and I will share that link below. Moving on to number 2, we've got a pop song. This song is called Nobody by Mitski. Now, I think Mitski just recently got a little bit more acclaim with her song Love Mine All Mine. And that song's blowing up renown. It's a beautiful song. This visual, though, for Nobody, another one that is, you're trying to find the meaning in it. So it came out in 2018 and was directed by Christopher Good. There is a lot that I can say about this visual. It's abstract, it's colorful, it's bright, it's interesting and entertaining, but certainly fits the mold of surrealism. Why? Because in the beginning, it doesn't feel like we're in a dream, but I would say quickly thereafter, it becomes more like a dream sequence because it feels inescapable and like we're stuck in this bizarre world that we're fully invested in her subconscious journey. Some of the lyrics kind of follow this ideology, like she can't seem to find anyone to love her. In the first verse, she's like, I'm so lonely. I open the window to hear sounds of people. And then she goes on to say, I don't want your pity. I just want someone near me. And then we get into the pre-chorus and she's like, I just need someone to kiss me. So she's definitely feeling alone. There's that isolation in there. And the visuals definitely complement the lyrics, not only because she is alone, but her interactions with people are blanketed. And even as the visual progresses, people's faces are blurred and scratched out. And because it's like a portrait, and someone has taken their hands and just like ripped the face out. You can't even really see the face. It's just, you can tell it's a face, but it's just blank. But people still scratched out the face. And you're like, what? That's so bizarre. There's even arms hanging out of the wall that can move, which to me maybe could symbolize people are trying to reach out to her, but she's blocking them or not accepting them because maybe she can't accept herself or something. But at one point she does take the arm and she holds the arm's hand, right? But there's this sad, melancholy look on her face, like as if something doesn't feel right. It just feels wrong. Some other arguments that I would make as to why this is surrealism is maybe, she's learning to accept herself and learning to be loved and accept love. There's even an opening shot that really sets the tone, I think, where she's sharing a milkshake out of an hourglass with herself, and it's complementary colors. One of her is wearing blue and the other her is wearing orange. And she's staring into her eyes longingly, yet sad and slightly exhausted, maybe from being alone. Now she sleeps in this visual and wakes up, and the other side of the bed just separates from her. And then another thing that happens that really sells the surrealism is we have a small little time-lapse moment that really signifies this anxiety that can creep in and all these thoughts swirling in your head of this realization that, oh man, this is my life. And if we were to be stuck in this dream scenario, or maybe she's stuck in like a lucid dream. And that's the beauty of surrealism. And again, with surrealism, because it's the subconscious mind, there's really no right or wrong answer. It's really just about how you interpret it. And because there's so much to unpack, I really implore you to go ahead and watch it. There's even a little moment where, or really throughout the entire visual, the word nobody is just, it's everywhere. It's plastered everywhere. So it's kind of like she's seeing it everywhere. So it's like, is nobody really there or not? That is the question. So definitely check out Nobody by Mitski. We have another pop song, and this song is definitely one of my favorites, definitely on repeat. And that is Obvious, in quotation or in parentheses, isn't it? So Isn't It Obvious by Alessia Cara. She just recently came out with this, and it was directed by Gordy de Saint Hoyer. Again, super sorry for butchering names. This visual, it takes place in an art museum. So right off the bat, we're getting that art aspect. And, I've noticed some pieces in there were Dadaism pieces. But of course, there's all kinds of pieces in an art museum. She herself is even being presented as an art piece. And there's also other humans that are being displayed as art. There's even a chess game that seems equivalent to like this game of love, which she even mentions this in the behind the scenes part of the visual. And I thought it was really interesting how she mentioned, we have this way of overanalyzing art and overanalyzing love. And so she wanted this visual to be a representation of the parallels of love and art and how we're just constantly overanalyzing them. So I find it a little funny and a little ironic because that is sort of kind of what I'm doing here today and what I do whenever I watch any visual, even if it's super simple. I overanalyze, but I think it's part of my filmmaker brain and I can't turn it off. So, but I love that she did that. And I think that in and of itself is very surrealist because people will overanalyze the subconscious mind and, talk about Freud and all these things. So nod to that. I love, love, love that. In the visual, we even get these like black and white images, and it almost feels like a nod to the old avant-garde black and white films. But it also kind of separates us too from, it puts us in a different place. I'll just say it like that. It puts us in a different place. So when we're in the art museum, it's colorful and bright, and then the black and white kind of mutes that and is a different side. Now, lastly, I'll say the paintings, they begin to float during the guitar solo, and it kind of equates to the vibe of the song. You just got to move. You just got to flow with the song. But it's also the feeling of love. You feel like you're weightless or on cloud nine when you're in love. And it's just, whether you overanalyze it or underanalyze it or don't analyze it at all, love is love, and it's a beautiful thing. Moving on to Sock It To Me by Leia. This is an R&B song. It came out in 2022 and self-directed. I just recently found her like maybe a year ago. And I found her through this song and through this visual. Like it popped up on my algorithm on YouTube. And I was just like, hey, let me check this out. The color scheme is like no other. It's got these deep, rich blues and reds and blacks and gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. But I will say it's very surreal because we open on this guy smoking, and there's a beautiful woman in his mind, and he's blue and she's red. And not only are they primary colors, but I know blue is very royal, prestigious, and calming, can be calming. But red is fiery and also very sensual. So that right there lets you know we're meeting Freud, right? I also really like how there's a smaller version of her that is just a face in a mirror, and she's holding this mirror. So there's like two faces, and the mirror is singing the song. And then the full body version of her is doing the ad libs. And I just like the reverse touch of that. I just think it's really, really clever. There's also a scene where her body is like deconstructed. Like her leg is over here, her arm is over there, and then her head just remains in the middle, just singing. It's just, it meets the bizarre. It meets the illogical, if you will. And then her hand is like holding a cigarette. And I was thinking maybe it was the cigarette the guy was smoking earlier. Like what's mine is yours, and what's what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine kind of thing, right? Then she removes her sunglasses and her eyeballs are lips singing the background vocals. So there's just lips everywhere. And maybe it's like her eyes are symbolizing like what they see, and she likes what she sees, and he looks good and he looks tasty, whatever you want to say. It's phenomenal. Then lastly, as the visual ends, we return back to the first shot, but this time the camera, instead of zooming in, is zooming out of the man's mind. And it's a beautiful feather to feather moment that concludes this surrealist, dreamlike state that we were just in for like 3 or 4 minutes. So definitely check out Sock It To Me. Moving on, we've got some hip hop. This is an underrated artist for me. He is one of my top 5 rappers. I present to you today Charmander by Amine. This came out in 2021 and was directed by Adam Daniel and Jack Burkert. Now, we start with this larger-than-life golden doodle, and I feel like I've been seeing golden doodles everywhere. I think that's the new, French bulldog? I don't know, y'all. I'm a cat person. I love me some dogs, but I love cats. But anyway, he's hanging out with this big old dog who's just sitting there. He just sits there the entire time, not playing fetch, just sitting there panting. And he's like pressed up against this dog, reading a book called Booty Talk. So we're starting off strong, Freud. We're starting off strong. Another thing is we have this element of time lapse and messing with the perception of time, of course. And we aren't sure, how long he's been in this house, because he's in a secluded area and it's just him, his girl, and his dog. And they're just, vibing. They're chilling. They're working out. They're eating. They're drinking. They're smoking. They're doing all these things. So it makes you wonder, based on the lyrics, of course, he's essentially talking about, I don't want to be around nobody, right? So it fits. It fits. It fits. It fits. So it's definitely a literal approach, I would say, to the music video of being alone in a space or a vacation home either. But it's subtle. It doesn't feel like he's alone or you can tell he's in a secluded place. It's really pretty. There's a lot of trees around. It's like a cabin house almost, And I think it doesn't feel that way because time is moving fast and it's also really colorful. And we get this, I would think they're doing some kind of recreational fun because their eyes get really large and dilated. And they even use a fisheye lens at one point. And so it makes you think oh, okay, there's some things going on. It's bizarre and, moving fast, and we don't know how long he's been there, and just all the things that make it a colorful, surrealist visual. Moving on, this is a rock song. This is Vaseline by Stone Temple Pilots. I had to do a little bit of research for this song because I just felt like there had to be another meaning for Vaseline. So when I was reading the lyrics and researching it, it seems like this song is a metaphor for being addicted to illegal substances. And we can see this in the lines where he talks about flies being in a jar of Vaseline. Because if you think about it, a fly getting stuck in anything, even a vat of goop, they're not getting out of it, or they're going to struggle to get out of it. So being with that in mind, it's this repetitive cycle being stuck in a loop. And even if you want to, it's hard to overcome. So what makes this visual fit the surrealist mold? Well, there's a lot of superimposing images on top of each other to create that ghostly effect. And of course, there's outlandish imagery, like there's a clown and a woman by the pool with her dog, and there's dancers dressed in dirndls and lederhosens. So it's bizarre. And to me, it's almost like it is representing the lyrics, but it could also be seen as like maybe a bad trip or even a fever dream of some sort that can't be escaped. So definitely check out Vaseline by Stone Temple Pilots. Next, we have another rock song. This band, I feel like as soon as I say the name, some of y'all might know it. Some of y'all, I'm going to have to give y'all some hints as to who it is. The visual we're talking about is Don't Go Away by Oasis. This came out in 2011 and was directed by Nigel Dick. So Oasis was one of my, like, how do I say this? My emo phase bands, you know? Definitely had Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance, Mindless Self-Indulgence, but I also had Oasis. You may know them from songs like Wonderwall and Champagne Supernova, but I would say Don't Go Away is another one of their songs that is really popular as well. The visual starts with Liam Gallagher, the lead singer, sitting in a room with his back facing us, but he's staring at a painting in this messy room. The next shot, we are only focusing on the contents that unfold and the scene that unfolds in this painting. There are people dressed in black, holding umbrellas and carrying instruments as part of like an orchestra, and they're about to go play in what I assume is a funeral. And the whole time, we're switching back and forth between Liam in this room and the window panes, which makes me feel like he's stuck in prison or trapped in his mind, of course, based on the lyrics, but also back to that isolation. He's in this room alone. So the shot of him in the window pane, like he's stuck, can't escape his own thoughts, right? And in this messy room, we later find out he's trying to write something and wants the right words to say and make it sound perfect. And seeing as how this might be his last chance, based on the lyric, I need more time. And as time passes, he rips up or crumbles the pages and more end up on the floor. My favorite element in this visual is when he's now in the painting, holding the umbrella. And I would say he's superimposed multiple times on the frame. And, you know, some of them are on the ground standing, some of them are floating in the air. For me, this brought up this Belgian surrealist artist, René Magritte. And I thought of his painting called The Son of Man, 1964, where it's a cloudy background, but yet it's got this beautiful pastel sky, and there's a man in a nice suit or an overcoat of some sort with a cute little top hat, but his face is being covered by an apple. I don't know or really think there's a direct correlation to the painting. Maybe he was trying to pay homage to Marguerite, but it certainly adds that layer of surrealism. Lastly, the visual does a great job of placing these proportions in times where, like, the guitar will be bigger than anything else, or Liam will be sitting in the chair really, really tiny. And so it just does a great job of playing with perception of time and space. And so that is why I believe it is definitely a surrealist visual. Moving on, we are talking about No Reason by Bonobo. This is more of a mellow electronic sound. It came out in 2017 and was directed by Oscar Hudson. This visual definitely should have a warning label. It gave me vertigo, like very dizzying effect. Now, we take place in one location, but it feels like we're in several locations. I would say we're stuck in this college student's room. And I say this because it's messy. There's food everywhere. There's clothes on the floor. There's books. I don't know. I'm assuming maybe he's studying for something. But the other thing that got me was that he was wearing a mask while being alone in this room. I would say that's a bit ahead of its time, maybe 8 years ahead of its time. So it kind of, when I first watched it, I thought maybe it was filmed in 2020, but no, not at all. So while we're in this narrow room, we're also looking beyond, and in the distance, there's even more rooms. So like, imagine, I guess it would be like a mirror facing each other. And I would say it's like repeating its reflection, almost creating like a portal for the spiritual people. But each reflection kind of decreases in size. And that's essentially what's happening in this visual. We are also tracking through these never-ending doorways. Each new room we enter, the man is doing something different, whether he's eating, sleeping, you name it, studying. But what you don't notice until it's right in your face, maybe a little too late, it's either the room is getting smaller or the dude is just getting larger. Like, at one point, we just see his legs, and then the next point, we see his arms. And then he's just gone. And we're stuck alone with just the elements in the room that become larger than life and manipulate perception of space, right? And so it's like there's multiple apples. Apples has been coming up a lot today. I just realized that. There's multiple apples, some type of like, I guess it's a bike or a riding equipment, something like that. The major point of surrealism for me in this visual is that it plays with time very well. We don't know how long he's been in that room, how long we've been in that room even. It's worth a watch. It is intense. And those are just 8 of the surrealist inspired music videos. And I know that there's several more out there. If surrealism is your jam, certainly check these out. And if there's any that I missed that you feel like should have been on this list, please let me know. And I would love to check them out if I haven't already seen them and discuss them with y'all in the comments. But anyways, that's a wrap, oldies. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today on That Old Soul Show for the old souls with fresh takes. If you loved today's episode, please be sure to subscribe and share it. Share it out with your friends, your fellow old souls. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye for now, oldies.